We used to go to the end of Simonton Street, where the sands is now. There was nothing there. We'd go in the water there and even go up to our knees and throw fishing lines and catch grunts right there in the water. We didn't even have it near the boat. That's how much fish was abundant here. Or we'd go out and catch some little fighting conchs, take them out, clean them on the beach, and eat them raw. Eat the raw conchs. So we didn't eat raw conchs and drink coconut water. We didn't even have to come home to eat. Stayed swimming all day and playing on the beach.
It was like a very neighborly sort of situation, black and white next door. We didn't think that much about discrimination or whatnot. We got along. It was more or less Cubans and black.
Key West was like everybody knew you, everybody helped you. You could sleep in your house without a key. We had very nice things here, you know. We were poor. We didn't have any riches, but still in all, everybody was happy.
So this friend of mine came and he was looking for me. So he went to a place and said, do you know Buddy Chavez? Buddy Chavez, yeah, that's my cousin. I said, you know, I can find him. I said, well, he goes here and he looks different. So he goes around and another guy, do you know Buddy Chavez? Hey, that's my uncle. You know, oh yeah. Well, it went like that for about 5 or 6 different people. I don't know why, but 35 people. When they were leaving, they stopped at the garage to get some gas and all that. And here comes this red fella with freckles and all that. He said, let me ask this guy here. He said, hey, do you know Buddy Chavez? I said, yeah, man, that's my stepbrother.
Some people that weren't my cousins used to call me, you know, say they were my cousin because we had a mutual cousin or two. It was like a tie that bound families together. Families that weren't related, you see, were still tied together.
We would go out in the morning, and if it wasn't catching fish, we would go look for Spanish limes in season. If it wasn't Spanish limes, it was guavas. It was always something, papayas, sapodillies, coconuts all the time. And we never came home. We would just find the nearest thing, eat, and continue to go riding our bicycles from place to place, and being mischievous and just running little clans, maybe 3 or 4 of us.
Fish was in abundance, all the fruits, and people knew one another. Chickens from your yard went to my yard the next day, and I knew whose chicken were. And it was just a life of honesty, and people weren't very wealthy, you know. My dad paid $3 a week rent in a, sometimes you didn't have the $3.
Back then, it was paradise. Today, it isn't. Back then, it was, you knew everybody. And it's true, everybody knew everything. And like they say, they read the paper. They didn't read the paper to find out what was done. They already knew that. They just found out who got caught.
Any one of these people that you see depicted could get in a small rowboat and row out 100 yards, 200 yards, dive for what Key West people call crawfish, what others call lobsters, put them in the boat, wring the head of the crawfish, throw it overboard for chum, and use the meat for bait. They would rather have the fish than crawfish because crawfish is rich. They didn't feel they could eat it so many times a week.
Love to go fishing.
Make our own little spear guns. That was amazing. We get a clothes hanger, and we'd cut it, and then we'd flatten one side and we'd file it, and then we'd go to our mother and get a thimble. and it had a little hole just big enough for this, a thimble about this big. Then we'd wrap some tape and some string around it with some straps, put a Band-Aid on the back so the little spear wouldn't go through, and we would spear little fish all up here in the South Beach, and right out here. Have fun, and we'd catch little fish, and back then when nobody was around, we'd clean them and make a little fire and eat them right there.
You think if you wanted crawfish, you just went out by the fort and go overboard there, in a half an hour, get all you wanted to eat.
Oh, every day we'd go out in the pull out somewhere in the summertime, you know, when it's good weather. We'd go get a mess of grunts, come home, clean them and cook them. Fried grunts, beans and corn. I love baked mutton fish, turtle steak, shrimp, crawfish, conchs. We had the best seafood.
My daddy liked to go out there on the boulevard at night and catch the little shrimp and sometimes crabs. I had to shine the flashlight. I had to hold the flashlight and shine it so he could see the shrimp, the eyes. And then my mama had to make him some shrimp chilau.
I had a snapper, hit that rod and reel and just tore it up. Oh, what is that? Now you need a hand line that you can handle the fishing rod Key West.
You got to know what you're doing. You let it go until you get it right, and then you pull back and you bring them in.
My uncle, Jakey Key, the party fisherman, and he used to take Ernest Hemingway in the boat fishing or what, and he took him a couple trips to Cuba. Gave him a wine set, the decanter and wine, and gave it to my uncle, and he said, "You take this home to your wife."
With the time for the jewfish, you just feed the neighborhood. Everybody gets a taste.
Go to the gas station, get about 6 inner tubes, poke a hole in the and we make a raft with the 6 tires, and we carry it from our house, and we go right down to Wall Street, carrying this big old raft, me and my friend, and we go right out here, put it in the water, and before you know it, we were paddling way out getting conchs. We take our goggles, we had our croaker sack, and we dived down, and the conchs were all plentiful. Everything was plentiful then.
We could get our own conchs. We could bring half a dozen conchs home and make conch stew. I never did learn how to get the conch out of the shell.
They were very difficult, and we'd go down to the end of South Street, which is right there, and watch old AC. He used to get conchs himself, and we wanted to see how he opened them. So we'd watch, he'd hit them on a certain spot, 1, 2, 3, pop them, put an ice pick, and that thing would slide out. Of course, it wouldn't work for us.
On Thursday afternoons, the stores used to close, and they would give the employees a half a day off. And that's what we used to do. We'd go to the old Boca Chica Bridge, and the men would fish, and my grandmother would fry the fish and cook grits right there on the beach.
And that was the best fish you ever ate.
Yes.
And never have eaten any more like it.
I was raised on grits and grunts. Yep.
They were the good old days, I tell you.
Like I say, we've had a lot of fun.
To be in the Keys in Key West, if you have nothing to do with the water, you wouldn't be here.
Early in the morning, we'd get to the window. He says, "Are you going swimming?" And the other one said, "If you go, I go." So that was a daily subject talk in the morning.
The beautiful natural beach, Rest Beach, it stretched all the way from White Street over to First Street, which is also called Bertha Street. And during the WPA days, during the 1930s, one of the projects was they built cabanas on the beach. I think there were more than 20 of them. There may have been as many as 30. And you could rent a rowboat, you could rent a cabana, like for 50 cents for the whole day. And we used to have big family picnics in the summertime. Well, the whole family would spend the whole day out there, rent a cabana, rent a rowboat, and have a good time. Come home sunburned at night.
We used to go to the beach early in the morning, and we had the picnics there. That's when they allowed you to sleep there at night, you know, so we could get a place.
4th of July, mostly we'd go to the beach and cook crawfish enchilado de langosta with rice and Cuban bread and music.
We had the most beautiful sandy beach and coconut palms. Every foot there was a coconut palm right there, and they had Pedro Aguilan had a stand, and everybody would buy from him. And that's where we used to go for sunsets and everything. We had the T bridge there, where on clear nights you could sit there and you could see the lights from the Capitol in Cuba when it was a clear night. And that's what was one of the things that people did. We went to get fresh air because we didn't have no air conditioning. We had a lot of mosquitoes and no fans. So that was one of the places to cool off.
In vacation time, my mother used to get up at 6 o'clock and we'd put on our bathing suits and we would walk to South Street, the South Beach, and we'd carry Spanish limes, bunches of Spanish limes to eat in the water, which was so good.
The Spanish lime from Key West is better Spanish lime than Cuba. And Cuba has the best sand in the whole world. But Key West for Spanish lime is the first one in the whole world because the Spanish lime is so sweet and so good that you won't believe it. And the best way to eat the Spanish lime, go to the beach and go and swim. And when you get that salt water in your mouth, you eat that Spanish lime, it looks like $1 million.
I get up at 3:30 in the morning, deliver my papers, go to my girlfriend's house, knock on her window, and we go swimming until about 7 o'clock. Then we go home, get dressed, and go to school before 8.
When we was young, me and Donald used to see Hemingway walking back from the Sloppy Joe's early in the morning all the time. I didn't know him, and Donald says, "That's Hemingway." See him walk, old drunken old man walking back to his house down the street early in the morning. And we didn't know who he was or whatever, but Donald knew who he was. We used to swim in his pool. He had a caretaker. And it was the first pool ever made in Key West. You know, this is history. And with about 7 of us, one day, we went in there and the caretaker either went away or something, and we made a hole in the fence, and about 5 of us, Fat Danny Garcia. We always let him go first because he was big and fat. So we're in there swimming, man, splashing all around, never forget it, man. And here comes the caretaker, he sees us, so we see him, he come out screaming. He had a bathing suit on with a leopard bathing suit. And just to scare us, he told us later, he started screaming, "Ah! If you never seen 6 guys try to fit in not one hole at the same time." We all tried to get out. He was chasing. Danny Garcia gets stuck in there. We pushed him through the hole.
The only family who had a swimming pool in Key West was Ernest Hemingway. We would go to his house, and I marvel at this story. Us guys, our parents was either a carpenter, fisherman. Some of the families, they sold bolita, the numbers, you know. So when we asked Gregory, he said, "Well, what does your father do, Gregory?" He said, "My father's a writer, an author." Well, we didn't know what that was. I didn't know that was a way of life. Because of the good weather, baseball was played a year around here.
We were like 4 little sections. We had Harris School boys, which used to go to the Harris School, and then we had Truman Avenue gang, and then there was a downtown gang, and then there was a black little gang, not really gangs, but if we played sports, we'd all stay together and play sports. And we used to go to the right across from Martinez Refrigeration, which is now Fletcher's. And we played, there was a USO there for military, and there was a big yard. And we go there and actually play baseball, knock it off a roof, and had the greatest time right over there. And we were rivals.
We used to have a team they called the Tomato League, and the name of the team was 4 teams. The Frutabomba, the Banano, the Rábano, and Boniato. That's the 4 teams we used to have. We used to play every day. I mean every day, no, every Sunday. we used to go play out there to the Blight Town because that's where we used to play ball. We used to, sometimes, we used to finish dancing on the Cuban Club, and from there, we used to go to the house and change and go play ball.
We used to play what are called sock ball. We'd get a bunch of old socks and just keep put them together, and at the end, we would sew. And we'd make a big sock ball and go get a post off a picket fence and smooth down the edge, and we would hit that ball and play in an alley or somewhere. Have lots of fun with that until somebody would snatch our ball. We had one lady there, if we ever hit in her yard, she'd take the ball, so we used to call her sock eater.
Somehow, because of the mixture of these conchs who came over here originally to be wreckers, and the Cubans who came over in the 1800s to make cigars, were gifted athletes. And Key West always felt that they were the best because they had the best athletic teams, the best baseball teams. And later, when football came into being, they were very powerful in football, would beat schools many times their size because they were strong, they were tough, they were used to the outdoors, they played outdoors all their lives, and they stuck together, and they had fun together, and they played hard together. They played as a team.
We had some wonderful baseball teams here.
Played against the University of Havana in football in a little town called Cardenas. When we got there, in Cardenas, we went in a ferry, and the mayor of the city came to visit us, and they had the band and everything out there, and they took us to horse and buggy through the town and showed us around town. And then the best part about it was we went to the mayor's office, and the mayor started to give a speech in Spanish, and the guys that around me didn't know Spanish, so they kept saying, "What is he saying? What is he saying? What is he saying?" So I had to tell them, but we had a good time. And we did go nightclubbing to Tropicana, one of the best nightclubs in Havana. We went to that. They had Nat King Cole was there at that time, and we stayed there and visited all those beautiful girls dancing the stages. And we would sit next to the stage, and one of the girls kept going like that and pushing herself up against him, and we were laughing, and he was embarrassed.
Some of these Key West athletes went into the major leagues. Albury, Boog Powell, George Meyer, pro football, San Francisco 49ers.
Boog was one of my favorite. He's still a very good friend. He got to be one of the best.
One of my playmates was Richie Garcia, who was an American League umpire for many years, and Robert Cuban Santana was there, and he was a great baseball player, was drafted by the Cleveland Indians. So for this small town, we did real well in sports, and these guys were older than me, George Lastris and Red Stickney in football. So for being a small town, we were always proud of our sports and always stuck together and did well for a small town.
They'd made an announcement in the paper that they wanted to have a flight to the city of Key West, and that you could send your entry in. So it took me 5 minutes to do what I did. And out of 579 entries, they picked mine because it was something simple. And it only took me 5 minutes to draw it. So the day that I was supposed to get the award, my wife was pregnant with my son. And I was about ready to have it, so she didn't go to the banquet with me. So I brought home, and I brought home a huge flag with gold fringe all around it that they presented to me.
On Saturdays, everybody dressed up with their best Saturday best, men, women, children, and they all walked from the Cuban Club all the way to McCrory's. Used to be on the corner of Eaton and Duval.
Walk up and down, and the birds would flirt with you, or you flirt with the boys.
Not the matinee, but the early movie. And then when we'd come out, you know, all the people would be promenading up and down Duval Street in their finery, girls looking for boyfriends. It was a custom that got started and it continued.
And the women would be shopping and the man will stand outside talking and everybody say hi to everybody walking there. Then they walk down the other side of the street, people going to Crest, the women, and they go shopping, and you get to meet everybody in Key West. You knew everybody.
I worked in Crest. Crest was the 5 and 10 cent store. They sold everything, clothes and toys.
I used to go before I was married with my friends. You know, our trip was from Crest to Zacarias. Zacarias was a man who had a sandwich stand. And everybody used to go there because it was cheap.
A lot of girls caught sailboys by promenading on the Duval Street on Saturday nights.
The big payroll in Key West was the naval station. Most of our parents worked in the submarine base and naval station.
We spent some of our time fighting with the sailor boys too. What really happened with the sailor boys is there were so many of them, and we only had a certain amount of girls here. So the high school might have, you know, back at the time, we maybe had 1,000 kids and 400 girls, and then they had 4,000 sailors in one ship. You know, so it was like the girls had like 10, 15 guys to one. Oh, and they enjoyed it too.
That was a big thing. First of all, I would go walking for my date and walk to the Strand Theater, which is now going to be, I think, a Walgreens is going to. So, yeah, walking to the Strand Theater, and after the show, walk to Sucamona, get the ice cream, Cuban sandwich. That was a big thing. Then walk her home.
I used to be working Saturday nights because my dad would stay open until the last show at the Strand Theater.
I worked over there as a water boy. Got to see Sally Rand doing her dance. So I think that got me more or less into the music. I was 14, 15, I guess. If you haven't seen Sally Rand do, I think she was just beautiful. It was almost like a nude act, but you watch the bubble. It's like a heavenly thing. Oh yeah, I played all around town. Gee whiz, yeah. I played the Cas Marina. I remember working as a pot washer over there when the war was on, and then the next time I said, well, that's an accomplishment from pot washing. Now I'm playing music over here to the Cas Marina.
They used to have like a dinner on Saturday and Wednesday on the patio. So they had to have a band. And then was a bar, which was very famous. They used to call it the Bird Cage. Very small bar, but there was a cage on the ceiling.
Everybody knows I'm calling.
And I played the Cas Marina for quite a while. The Bamboo Room, which was now the Green Parrot. The Hookie Lounge, yeah. I was going to, let's say that next. It was like a second home.
I play with Coffee Butler. He's a very fine pianist and vocalist, and we worked together, I would say, 20, 25 years, off and on.
I gave the number 4 and going home. And I gave the number 4, he said, child, give me some more. Put your lips close down and drive it home. Well, after the war broke out and things got kind of, I guess you would call it slow around here. We're too young to go to the war. We decided to form a band. And it got to the place where the war started taking one and taking another. Then we turned around, it was called Coffee and the Cups. Because there wasn't that many of us around. Buddy Chavez, Bobby Lowe, and myself. I guess they called that the original Coffee and the Cups. And then it was Bobby Lowe, Marvin Boza, and I. But we really got what you call real popular. We even did did a year in Fort Lauderdale. Where we did an album called Let 'Em Talk. I don't know, I feared getting into the big part of the music scene because I saw so many real nice guys get into the wrong sort of environments and get destroyed. In fact, the biggest thing was Fats Navarro. I watched him. He went to high school here, and one of the traveling bands took him away, and he got to be one of the giants of jazz. But he also got into the drug sort of picture. And it bothered me quite a bit because I knew he was one of the nicest guys you want to know. I didn't get to the big town, but I loved it all. And when I raised the movie levels, he said, "You got to be a Bahamian. Put your lips close to mine and drive it home."
He got to see me. He's looking for Buddy Chavez.
You know, Buddy Chavez was not only a great musician and drummer, but he shined shoes with the same beat, popping that rag. ¿Te acuerdas? Sacando el río.
Buddy's always been a musician and always a very outstanding dancer. And him and his, which was his sister-in-law, Milagros, they should have gone to Hollywood or one of those places because they were outstanding.
We had it right at the La Concha.
Right.
We used to be there every Saturday. And we performed there, and they used to throw us tips and whatever.
Buddy.
And then from there we used to go to Jesus Camona.
Buddy, all these years I've known you, I want to ask you one thing.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a steady job?
Hey, we're talking business now. I mean, we're talking, don't mention no job, but I mean, you know, I'm retired. You know? I've been retired, you know, for years.
He does.
Yeah, you worked up there here for Perucho cleaning Prussia Club.
I did, a day and a half.
Did you work with my brother Kaki?
I worked for Kaki.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, I think I did the whole week.
You worked for Perucho.
The whole week. I made $30 and that was it.
I tell you, quit, man.
I had no more job.
Then he lived off his tamales for the rest of his life.
That's it. I've been living out of my
Those were the good days, let me tell you.
I've been living out of my tom-tom for 60 years. Before I was a drummer, I was a dancer. Like I say, you know, I was standing in the corner one day, and there was a little group playing, and Milagro Chavez, Rivera, before getting married to my brother, and she was dancing, and I was just looking at her, and all of a sudden she grabbed me and said, "Let's dance." I said, "Well, I don't know how to dance." She said, "You know, you got the talent for it. You got the rhythm." We used to go down to La Concha, right on the sidewalk, and at that time, we probably had 12 tourists in Key West a week, but we had a lot of local people. We did a pretty good living because I mean, if I make $1 that day, oh, Mama would cook, you know. I went to a movie which I had the privilege of telling him this story. His name was Gene Cooper. Was one of the best drummers in the world. And when I saw him play drums, I say that's what I want to do. I went home and I told my father to buy me a set of drums. And my father said, "Son, I can't buy you no set of drums. I make $14, $15 a week." Well, I say, well, I'm shining shoes now. If I can save 50 cents a day, I'll probably get it to buy a set. I used to go to my friend's house. They had a set of drums. So my practice, I used to go to their house. But somehow it grew on me. It grew on me, and I can feel that swing. You know, I can feel. I knew that I could be a drummer. And then I have my drums. It wasn't a set like today. Kids have a set of $2,000. I mean, you know, with that $50 set, I can make people dance. So from there, I went to work at the State Inn Bar, which is today the Rick's, next to it. So I got a job making $48 a week. Now, $48 a week, that was in 1949. That was good money, you know?
Very good.
When I was there, all my friends gathered and all that because they introduced me to Daniel Santos, who was a very fine vocalist, very popular in Havana, Cuba. So I was there waiting for him to see if he called me. And all of a sudden he went like that. He said, wow, you know, I went there and I did my thing, and he was real happy. He was even dancing when I was playing. And then after that he said, buddy, you're leaving with me tomorrow. Before that, I told my mother, I said, you know, get me some clothes ready and all that, because I know if he hears me play, he's gonna take me with him. But I was like kidding, you know, and in fact, it happened. I make my own group here in Key West. We used to be at Logan's house. That became like a house to me.
That's where I used to go dancing with my wife. And we used to go there, and people used to sit to watch us dance. I mean, that was the greatest time I ever had in my life. I'm still missing Key West, the real Key West.
Everybody remember the conga line and all those things?
I was showing her, we have pictures here in this book when I used to dance with the conga.
Yeah.
And I was 14 years old. Yeah. And I was telling her those were the real dancers.
Yeah.
Real dancers. Not only that we used to perform as the compasa, but we had a show in between us.
Those were good compasas, and
right.
People
Me
in
and
them days,
Amelia,
they used to dance.
All of them.
Not me, because I didn't drink money. I was into sports.
And Daniel Costa.
I was playing for the high school.
And Amelia, we had a trio, we used to dance.
That time and point, we were in good relationships with Cuban. The Cuban gunboats would come over and they would rope off Duval Street, and there would be Congo lines down Duval Street, and the Cuban and the Cuban Club had a lot of festivities, music, and it was a feeling of warmth and happiness.
The conga line started from the Gulf all the way to almost Atlantic. We would always go up those beautiful stairs up to the Cuban Club. That was where we made the show. We had shows afterwards, or samba, or I don't even remember what you call it. It was like a snake dance that we used to do, and things like that. We were very young, but it was beautiful. It was just gorgeous. Conga line that was directed by Abelardo Bosa. He needed all the young kids he could get. And believe me, we were many of us, because that was it. That was all we had. And that's how I started dancing in the conga line. Mm-hmm. And as you see in the pictures, and some of them are younger than others, but the best time was in 1950. That was the best of all the congas we had in Key West. And the skirt was made round. So when you dance, you move with your skirt. And you held your skirt with your right hand. That's why when you see me dancing, I always pull my skirt up, because I'm used to doing that. But that was the pretty of it. And the boys wore the same costume, but they wore the opposite. ways. The ruffles were from the shoulders to the wrist. And naturally, when you're dancing, when you move, 1, 2, 3, boom, and you say conga, because that's the way we were taught. And those ruffles will move, and it was beautiful, especially with the lamparas that they used to wear. They weren't called lamparas, they were called something else, farolas. And they were lighted, and there was always the gentlemen that carried it, had the same outfit that the boys had. And it was so beautiful because, especially we didn't have that many lights in Key West. And how we started way down by, it was the Havana Madrid then, when it first, by the First National Bank, the first bank we had. And we danced down the street. Mm-hmm. And it was just so beautiful, and the people with the crowds and all that. We enjoyed doing it, because that was the best thing we had. We enjoyed it every second. We were never tired. We could dance and dance and dance, and that was it, you know. And then afterwards, we went, we gave the shows, and then we kept dancing for the rest of the night.
And the Cuban Club had many, many dances upstairs.
The Cuban Club, that's the favorite of everyone. The Spanish music, rumba, cha-cha-cha, all kinds of Spanish music. How did I know? Oh, because my whole family knows how to dance, and they knew how to dance, so I had to learn too.
I learned to dance one night at the Cuban Club, first dance I'd been to, and before the end of the night I was teaching the girls.
I'll tell you, I always liked to dance. I had this young man lived next door, Joe Valdez. He later on, he was an eye doctor. Mm-hmm. He showed me how to dance at Charleston. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen it? I still like to dance at Charleston.
That's all we did was dance. Yeah. And the sweat would be pouring off of us.
Right. No air conditioning. No air conditioning.
What a beautiful dance floor.
Yeah, sure was.
We used to have.
I remember it used to shake sometimes. There was so many of us on it, it used to shake.
This, we used to have a little book and put their names down.
Yes.
And the floor, it was so beautiful, made out of wood, but it was so shiny that you slip once in a while because it was so shiny, so good, that you have to watch out yourself. But that's the best place you ever could dance. And there used to be some orchestras there from Cuba, and they used to play there.
The Cuban bands came from Cuba, and they played at the Cuban Club, or they played right in front of the San Carlos, and they would close the streets, and we would dance there.
One boy, he smoked. Even though he was young, he smoked, and he used to like to dance with me. And I used to try to hide. And if he called me and I had to dance with him, I had to dance this way. Oh God, as I was frowning.
Or in Halloween, it was just beautiful. We didn't go to those dances because sometimes it was by invitations only. And we would sit across the street from the Cuban Club at Felicia's house, Felicia Rueda's house, and we'd watch all the costumes. But they had beautiful costumes then. And it was just out of this world.
Yes, the Cuban Club was really an area of entertainment, Latin music.
But I used to hang around the bar. I used to sit in the bar there and having a Cuba Libre or something like that, and play dominoes, something like that. But that was the ideal place, especially on Sunday. You never see so many people, well-dressed, walking back and forth, go to stop with your grandfather to have ice cream, helado, mantecado.
And downstairs, billiards, dominoes was a big thing for people. Dominoes was a very impressive game. People, you wanted so-and-so, they were playing dominoes.
But it used to be on the other side of the Cuban Club. They had a little place, which was great. They used to sell Cuban sandwiches. And they'd have a man right down the front with a window. You could see him. He had a big roasted pork and a big ham and everything. And you could see him cut the ham and put it on your bread, and cut the pork and put it in your bread.
Mario Sanchez, the famed artist, was an excellent pool player. He played pool in the Cuban Club, and his cue stick was bent, and they called it El Camello, the camel. Cue stick was him. He was an excellent billiards player, yeah.
The old man around there used to teach us young ones a lot of things. And that's when I met your grandfather, met him among those people. I was born in a house right behind this Cuban Club. And as teenagers, there used to be a wall here where we all used to sit here and talk for hours at night. Then, of course, my daddy would whistle and tell me to go home at 10 o'clock. The old man used to come on a cap. His name was Capitan, and he was crippled. And he used to sit here in this corner on a cement wall, and he used to tell us stories about the older days. And my daddy used to hang around here. My grandfather used to hang around here. My great-grandfather used to hang around the Cuban Club. Like you see, there's no one here. On a Sunday morning when I was a kid, everybody was waiting. We had to go play baseball. We had plenty of people here ready to go play baseball. Today, there's no one here. There's not a soul in this place. No one. That's what makes it sad. And last night, they would have had a dance up there. You would have probably seen somebody sleeping there. They got drunk last night from the good dance.
We lived at the Al-Anon. That was the only ice cream in the world, was the Al-Anon.
We looked forward to going to the ice cream parlor and getting our favorite brand of ice cream. My favorite was coconut.
Nobody ever make ice cream like Jesus Carmona, the old man Jesus Carmona. He used to be the best in the whole world. Talking about Cuban, I used to eat some ice cream in Cuba. They won't come around him.
We had to survive, and as survivors, we used to sell the same fruit that we lived on. We take it down to Mr. Carmona's. He was known to buy all these tropical fruits.
I had some uncles who had a little property on Catherine Street where they grew. They had sapodillies, they had soursop, they had sugar apple, they had all those things. And I used to take them and sell them to your grandfather to make ice cream. And I cracked plenty of coconuts for him, and I watched him do his ice cream, and I know how he made his ice cream. And no one's gonna get that recipe from me, only my daughter.
I was born right in Virginia Street, right across the street from Jesus Carmona, the coconut man, the Anon. So I used to help him there when I was a kid. And then while right at the house, he used to make the coconut ice cream. And then, wow, after it was done, then he gave me a can full of ice cream. And that was the day for me.
My dad started the business in 27. There was nobody selling magazines and newspapers. Now, one thing that I like to say is that Hemingway came in, because everybody knew everybody in Key West. And he came in, he says, I want the New York Times. My dad says, I don't have it, I don't know how to get it. And Ernest Hemingway said, if you want to, I'll call New York. He says, any help I can get, I appreciate it. So he came to his home, called New York, and not only got us the New York Times, but the Herald Tribune, the World Telegram, the New York News, and New York Mirror. And they were brought in by train 2 days late. But we were the only ones that had the newspaper, so it helped the business. And then when Harry Truman came to Key West, he wanted his paper the same day. So they worked out a scheme with National Airlines, and I delivered the paper to Harry Truman every day. I used to go on my bicycle, take the paper to the little White House, Nobody stopped me, but I'm sure they watched me. I opened the door, go inside, and put the paper on the coffee table. I was real proud of that because normally they would stop everybody, check them and everything else, which is normal. Then I went to Georgia Tech, and I went to work for NASA in Langley Field, Virginia. And my dad needed help, so I came back to Key West. I bought a boat, and I went fishing for 25 years. So I don't feel that I've lost anything by giving up my college education, shall we say, because you cannot buy the enjoyment that I got out of fishing.
My dad was a cigar maker, and he also taught violin and guitar, and he was, like I said, the conductor of a band. So then he'd come home and he'd give lessons, violin lessons or saxophone, piano, whatever. Then from there he used to go to the Monroe Theater and play.
He played the violin, and a friend of his played the piano, Mrs. Piodella. And they would provide the music for the silent movies.
And then from there he used to go and play in the nightclub on the boulevard. Raoul's. So he didn't have too much time to sleep.
Who's that, Papa?
Yeah.
He had plenty of time. He had 7 children. I had to get that in.
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing. He must have had some time to go there. It was a very interesting thing for a person to work all those hours and have some too.
Lou, tell them about the roosters.
Yeah, my fortunate and unfortunate, my family trained these roosters to fight. That was the custom in Key West. Yeah, Fresno. And they even went to Cuba to bring certain breeds to Key West.
Right there in front of the Cuban Club, right there in the corner of Cuban Club, every Friday at 7 o'clock, all the people that used to raise rooster, and they used to have rooster and train rooster, used to come 7 o'clock. That's the time everybody used to have a little less and put it right down the weight from the rooster. They don't allow us to go and see the rooster fight. We used to climb in the tree and look at it. 72 years I've been with rooster, and I never leave it. I always like the rooster, and I'm gonna die with it, and nobody are gonna take that away from me.
Best rooster in Key West was called the white rooster. ¿Te acuerdas? Fue el gallo blanco. That was the best rooster in Key West. Nobody could beat the gallo blanco.
The white rooster.
The white, all white. That was the best rooster in Key West.
That was trained by Gil Garcia.
Gil Garcia used to have that rooster.
Oh yes, B29. He had a white rooster that, guess what? Where that rooster used to sleep in his bed because they threatened to steal it from him. He used to take him to Cuba, to Tampa, and everything. But he was treated like a king, believe me, because he never lost. Never lost in his life.
But the best rooster ever I born, 9 Key West, and the whole world, I had it. And he called the Malatobu. That rooster make a fight, and he ain't made no more fight because everybody was scared of him. And let me tell you this, the Malatobu was a rooster. The Malatobu was a poison, because let me tell you he was so nice and so good. Everybody telling me, all the Cubans, telling me, never will born another rooster like the Malatobu.
There was a book of nicknames put out in Key West.
My brother's got that book.
You know, I've known this guy all my life as Buddy Chavez. I just found out his name is Rogelio. Oh, I know that. Rogelio Chavez.
The custom of giving almost everybody a nickname And that's really a combination of the two cultures, because the Cubans are famous for that as well, of giving very humorous nicknames to their neighbors and their friends. And the Conks always had the tradition coming over from the Bahamas.
You had the nicknames of the crowd we hung around with. We have Bugs Bunny, because he looks like a rabbit. Boca Chula.
When I got to the place where I thought it would be kind of funny, I tell the younger ladies they call me Coffee because I grind so fine. That was supposed to be a big thing.
My yaya, remember my yaya? My yaya won the lottery one time, and he rode a bicycle selling
cheap sandals.
shoes. And when he wants 1441, 1441, 1441.
Crooked. They used to give it away. Or sell them, Sammy, Black Sammy, remember? Yeah. He used to sell them for 3-4 quarter. 3-4 quarter. And it was already boiled and everything.
And then the other one that used to go around selling was piduli. They used to sell pidulis. You know what pidulis are? On a stick. There's a stick.
A lollipop.
It's like on a toothpick, like. And he'd have different flavors and what, 2 for a nickel or something like that? A penny.
And then there was a man that used to sell hokey pokey. Hokey pokey, 5 cents a block. Made in the shade, sold in the sun. If you ain't got a nickel, you can't get none. It was something like ice cream. It was frozen. And it was like in little squares, wrapped in something like parchment paper.
I remember they had ice cream. And we used to sell it around the street on a little wagon.
Yeah, push cart, yeah. I did that.
So I remember they gave me a job, and things were, real bad at that time, like 10 cents or 10 cents. So anyway, he gave me a percentage, I think it was 10 cents every time. Well, at the end of my job, I owe him 30 cents. I ate off of the ice cream.
You could get a broomstick and line it up with the Spanish lime, a bunch of Spanish limes.
And there'd be 2 boys, one on each end, carrying a broomstick with all the bunches of Spanish limes hanging on the broomstick. Hooray, Spanish limes, and we got them sweet, just like a piece of turkey meat. You could run out and buy a bunch of Spanish limes for maybe a nickel.
5 or 10 cents, quite a bit you get for the 5 or 10 cents, because 5 or 10 cents was quite a bit back then, yeah.
They had a band. They used to have a big thing. The funerals were a big thing. They were all dressed up in their white finery, white clothes. You'd hear them coming from way down on Solaris Hill. You could hear that band coming, playing the music, leading the parade, the funeral procession. People going by walking by would be over there on the fence watching it, and cars would stop and watch these big. It was a big thing, the black funerals. They had a big celebration.
My uncle, Sam Butler, was the leader at one time of that Welter's Corner band. So I know quite a bit about, and they were very serious. Everybody used to like to go and listen when they practiced and whatnot, and they were very serious about the music. And they played real solemn going to the graveyard, real solemn. And then coming back, it was like, it's all over, so now let's have fun. And it was a bohemian sort of thing coming back. Like they do in New Orleans, yeah.
And I remember when one of them, when they used to have the Junkanoo, that was later, the Junkanoo used to play down on Mallory Square. I think when the cruise ships first started coming in, some of them used to be down there, the Junkanoo band. And one of them died, and so they had the Junkanoo band at his funeral. Oh, that was a big, loud concert right near the fence here. He was buried. Yeah, it's all gone. It's not here anymore.
You heard the story of Carl von Cosel and the young lady, and of course that's a true story. My mother saw her body on display at the Lopez funeral home, and her body was in paraffin, waxed. Her arms had piano wires to keep them stabilized, and this guy von Cosel married her and performed a marriage ceremony.
But the sun, you know, was going down or just going down. We would be out playing on the sidewalk, dodgeball or hopscotch, jumping rope, different things. And almost every evening, von Cosel would come walking down Francis Street in his little white outfit, his little English white shorts and socks and white shirt. He'd go into the tomb in the mausoleum, and he would sing songs, and he'd talk like he was, you know, talking to Elena. And this went on for several years, and we thought he was crazy. We were scared of him.
We was walking around there. We didn't know it looked like a barn, you know, and he come out and run us away from there. And we never could understand why that German, because everybody knew he was German, you know, what that German had in there, because he was building an airplane. You could see that.
Mr. von Cosel took Daddy and us inside the house. We saw the bed with the mosquito netting. We saw his plane where they said that he kept her there sometime too.
Yeah. He transferred her from the beach from the cemetery to the beach on the plane.
And we were there at where, you know, at the house where he lived. So I tell you, it was kind of eerie now to think about it.
Well, my grandmother, myself, and my husband, we discovered that he had taken her out of that vault. My grandmother always went to the graveyard every day of her life.
Right.
And she went and noticed that the hasp on the coffin were unlocked. So when we came home, my grandmother called her sister. She lived on Varela Street.
Right.
And that's how all of this got started.
Elena's sister went out to von Cosel's shack, and as she could see in the doorway, he opened, you know, and she was talking to him. She could look in and see into the bedroom. She saw a bed with a figure. So she got the sheriff to go back with her to see, and sure enough, it was Elena's corpse, which he had had out there for 9 years, all the time visiting the empty mausoleum.
Let me tell you, he used to come to the store and buy a lot of ivory soap. I mean, he'd buy 6 and 8 just about every day. And then I heard that he was using that ivory soap some way to preserve her body.
Do you know that my father was called to play the violin at that trailer where they lived?
Well, I went to the trailer, I went to the house. Annabelle Moffett, me, and Edie, and Ramona.
Where?
It was at the end of Flagler.
Flagler Street.
And
Oh, okay.
Flagler at that time wasn't developed.
No, right.
And we went in, and he had the table right here, and her bed was right over here. We couldn't believe that he would eat with that corpse right there.
They put her corpse on display down at the funeral home. At Lopez Funeral Home, which was then facing Bahama Street. And so I was not going to miss that. I think everybody in town who could walk, who could get there, went to see her. And the day I went, the line stretched all the way down to the corner and around on Eaton Street down to DeVille Street.
So very quickly, she was buried again at night, and nobody knew except her parents, Dr. Depew, the medical examiner, and the chief of police at night, and they're all dead.
And Tom Hambright The historian thinks that they might have buried her in the same lot where her baby is, but nobody knows.
During the Depression now, we did pretty good. My dad had a good job. He drove a Chrysler, and he was chief engineer down there, so he did good. He did good. We didn't have no problem, but I've seen kids go to school with a piece of Cuban bread, and that was lunch.
During the Depression time, things were so bad here in Key West. It was over the whole country, but Key West was terrible. You get anything. If they say, you want to do this job? Yeah, sure, I got to do it. I need it.
My father used to work in the double PA in Key West, and my father used to make $1 for 7 kids. My father 8 and my mother 9. And he used to make $1 a day. Plenty of time we used to go to the bed because we ain't had nothing more to eat. With a piece of bread, I used to go to the bakery and he used to give me a big sack for a nickel, and the bread used to be harder than a brick because we ain't had nothing to eat. We used to get that bread, put it in black coffee, warm it up, and eat it.
Having families marry into each other is a very close-knit society where people helped each other. If someone had an avocado tree, all their neighbors would give an avocado. Somebody else would have a mango tree, all their neighbors would have mangoes, and so forth. Somebody would come in with a mess of fish, the neighbors would all have fish. So it was a sharing, commune type of society.
My dad, I can remember on Saturday night, he'd go down to Archer's Grocery on Fleming Street, and he'd get our groceries. Then he'd get 5 bags of groceries. I remember this. And then he'd leave and go and put the groceries out to different people's houses. That was all the time. Everybody helped everybody. It was nothing like it is today.
Somebody had to go to work, like if my mother had to go to work at the laundry and I got sick, the lady next door would take care of me. They would feed me and took care of you for no, you didn't even have to ask. You leave your windows open, your doors open. Nobody come in your house to take anything. The man, somebody catch fish and wanted to give you something, they feed you, they do anything, they shared food, we shared everything.
Yeah, I remember my father paying 75 cents or else a week, and sometimes he didn't have it, and he said, well, we'll see you next week.
Crawfish we don't want to see. Fish we don't want to see because we eat that every day. And let me tell you this, that was a hell of a day, but it was a good old day.
It was a type of society where they also helped raise each other's children. The children couldn't go off and do anything without their parents knowing about it before they got home. Hillary Clinton wrote a book called It Takes a Village, and certainly the village here in Key West helped raise all of the children.
So you see what was paradise in terms of all the tropical fruits, the fishes. In the morning, the streets, you could smell the Cuban coffee. Someone had a little cigar factory in their backyard. They made gold cigars.
Well, there were so many local families that are gone today. The children have moved away, not the older folks, but the children have moved away and the old folks have died. That's where it ends now. We don't have the camaraderie that we had before.
By now, a lot of people, there are not many old conchs, not many descendants of the old conch families.
And I fished around the docks and I looked around and I said, I'm wondering, why doesn't Key West look like Miami Beach, you know, or Hawaii? I mean, this is an island, pretty here. I mean, I don't understand it. And boy, I no longer opened my mouth, and about 2 years later, they put in the first big place, which was the Pier House. And then gradually, you know, the island started, and gosh, by the end of the 70s, I already saw what was going to happen.
And when I came back in '64, it was horrendous, you know. They had started building Searstown in '64. And after that, it became a building boom, and everything was being built. That's when I bought my house, and they started cutting wetlands and mangroves, everything, and Key West started to spread.
And I used to tell people, don't sell your house, rent it. Go up there, if you like it, fine, come back and sell it. But they would. I had a good friend of mine just died up there, and he sold his house on Big Carpet. It was a beautiful. 6 months later, he was going crazy trying to get back, and he can't afford it.
I was angry because today we have no fruit here. You don't see any sugar apple trees, Jamaica apple trees. They cut them all to plant shade trees will give you nothing. And it makes me very angry that they have changed Paradise into just like any other t-shirt city. You go downtown, all you see is t-shirts.
Well, Duval Street's a good example because Duval Street was the promenade in the old days, in my mother's days, to walk up Duval Street to get an ice cream soda someplace and to socialize with other young people. Now, of course, Duval Street is taken over by t-shirt shops and tourists, and as they would say, strangers. And it's not their Duval Street anymore. They've lost that. They've lost that part of their culture.
You go to those neighborhoods, you don't know nobody. There's nobody there left. That's what hurts. But I'm still here.
Key West as we knew it is dead and gone. This is a new Key West. For better or for worse, it's a new Key West. Probably 15% of the native population is still in Key West. But it just became economically infeasible for them to live here because the cost of living in Key West has gotten so high. Insurance rates are higher, the taxes are higher, cost of everything is higher. So these good people, these good conchs are scattered about. They always come back to Key West. You always see them when they come back at the local restaurants that serve the Cuban food and the conch food. That's the first thing they want to do when they come back to Key West. Get a Cuban mix, get some black beans and rice, and eat some of the food that they remember as part of their culture growing up. The main thing is the feeling of the people here for each other. That feeling that started with an island being unto itself, and the independence of the people and the feeling that they belonged someplace and that each had their own identity carried over to my day, where there's a special feeling in Key West, a special feeling of love, of affection that people have for each other that you don't find in a lot of other places.
Key West is one place where you either hate it or you love it. There's no in between. People who come to Key West, you either hate it or you love it.
If I die, we're all gonna die. But this will be my burial place. This one here. And I'm gonna pray.
Like I said to you, I love this town. I was born here, and they're gonna plant me here. I'm not going anywhere. This is where I came, this is where I'm going.
that's another. This lady is another one that you want to interview because she can really tell you about Key West. Yes. Ajá.
Come back.
Alicia, yo estoy haciendo un interview aquí, pero que estoy haciendo un interview, ¿tú sabes?
Mi maldición.
Espérate, no, que te está oyendo todo por la televisión, no hagas.
Maldición mía.
Mira, te quieren hacer un interview a ti para de Cayo Hueso, que esto es para la gente que sepan.
You want to know?
I love Key West.
What do you love about it?
Everything. In the olden days, not Key West today, because the damn Yankees came here and ruined it. You can put that in the book, I don't care.
Who put the pepper in the Vaseline? This is who put the pepper in the Vaseline? Who put the pepper in the Vaseline? Oh Lord, nice thing is being. Let me tell you how this goes. Who put the pepper